Welcome to Adventures in Ink. I'm your
No, we like we there was Mike.
bloopers.
We just talked to Mike about not messing up and how doing the intro carry was why we rotated a bunch. And right off the bat, we got Mike's head and you messed up.
All right.
Stop reverse.
Welcome to Adventures in Ink. I'm your host, Mike, along with my co-hosts,
Matt.
And Scott.
and this week we are going to be talking about keywords, and specifically the keywords in Lorcana, what they are, what they do for basics, but also when are they useful, what strategies are they good with, and what colors do you normally see those in, what ink colors, and then also we will talk about cards that we think are iconic that represent that specific keyword very well. So, as we get started, what is a keyword? In game design, keywords are things that the designer wants you to be able to talk about in shorthand rather than having to say out an entire phrase over and over again. So it's usually something that's common across multiple cards, but it also has some sort of identity that's attached to it. In Lorcana, currently there are 9 different keywords. And they are bodyguard, challenger, evasive, reckless, rush, shift, support, ward, and resist.
You forgot one.
Oh, which
You
one? did I
forgot
get?
singer.
And singer, yeah, it's not on here. Singer. I have it typed up in the notes. So that makes 10. I guess before we get into any of these in particular, are there any ones that you guys are like, I always try to include this kind of keyword, or I like this one a lot?
Bodyguard, ward, resist.
Yeah.
My favorite deck I'm playing with is, I call it my wall, because I just build this massive wall that my opponents have to get over to even touch my characters.
For me, Sift is my most played. Evasive is good, but I build around other effects. I've had normally at least one challenger in my main deck, but I don't think I have any currently. But yeah, Tip my go-to. I find that really good. I've messed around with a Tail Song deck a little bit, and I do like it. It's an interesting play style.
Yeah, I would say for me, I like support, even though I've never really successfully used it in a constructed deck. Limited, it's great. And yeah, Challenger. I think Challenger is very interesting, and we'll talk about why I like it when we get to it, but I think it works differently than you might expect when you first read it, so that's what's really cool. So first, let's start with Bodyguard. So Bodyguard says that this character may enter play exerted. An opposing character who challenges one of your characters must choose one with Bodyguard if able. So essentially, if someone wants to challenge any one of your characters, they first have to make sure that there's no bodyguards that they can challenge. And bodyguard's seen in the colors amber and steel. I don't think anything else, correct?
I'm not seeing anything else.
So typically, when would you want to use bodyguard?
The best I've seen it used in competitive play is the turn 2 or turn 3 ones. When you play the 1 drop or 2 drop that have the multiple lore, having the bodyguard, especially like Simba, Protective Cub, just be able to allow that stuff to quest, and because it's very early game, your opponent only going to have like one character to challenge with. So having that Simba there to protect Lero and getting that 2 lore on turn 2 is a great start to the game.
Mm-hmm.
And my keyword, that Simba Protector Club, for a while was the most offensive common in Debt 1.
Yep. I actually remember when we started playing, I was like, I still don't have a full playset of Simba Protective Cub. And it was just very frustrating because I had like full playsets of some rares at that point.
Well, that like into the Inkland, that 2-drop with Rut.
Yeah.
I only pulled one of him out of all the boxes I opened.
Yeah, I got one in the draft. on Friday. That was great. Yeah, the other thing about Bodyguard is typically it works really well on characters that have very high willpower. And I would say that, that's not always the case. With Simba Protective Cub, he only has 3 willpower, but for a 2 cost, that's usually the best you're going to get. But obviously, the more willpower they have, the more kind of blocking or bodyguarding power they're going to have. When you think of bodyguards, which cards come to mind? So you already said Simba Protective Cub. Scott, are there any that?
Mine's always going to be the Prince. Never gives up. That's just because he's one of my mainstays in my deck. So he's who I think of when I think bodyguard. I want to get him out on the field as soon as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the Musketeer, they'll all got bodyguard that we've seen so far. There's a couple previews for the next set that I don't think have bodyguard, but the majority of the Musketeers we have currently have bodyguard.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's true. The other thing that's very interesting about bodyguard that people might not realize if you're new to the game is based on the wording. If that bodyguard can't be chosen to be challenged, you can get past that bodyguard. So, for example, if somebody was able to give your bodyguard character evasive, and the character that's challenging doesn't have evasive, that character doesn't have to choose your bodyguarded card.
But on the reverse situation, if your bodyguard card is standing up, and then Cinderella, Dark Knight, or I forget the subtitle of that.
Yeah, the steel 5/5 can challenge upright characters.
Yep. If you have her, she have to go for the bodyguard unit then. If you have a bodyguard unit standing up.
Yeah, that is very interesting. So there are nuances. You have to pay attention to the wording. And then the other thing about bodyguard is that it is one of the few things that allows your character to come into play exerted, or to exert kind of on that first turn. The other being rush, but they would have to challenge to exert that character. And obviously that's to make bodyguard useful. You want to play it and have it actually, come into play ready to protect something. Any other thoughts about bodyguard when you see it useful, or
honestly,
what it pairs well with?
Last episode we were talking about budded decks. There was a person that came to the store after set 1 and then buying Tingled from us, and we built him a really good budded deck based around the Musketeers and Bodyguard.
Mm-hmm.
That's having about the Bodyguard, and then you pair it with high low cost cards, and you put the tablet down so you keep drawing every time a Bodyguard gets banned. Actually very useful, and I've seen him have some decent get that with that deck.
Mm-hmm.
He did, yeah. I remember going up against that deck. It was a challenge to get around his cards sometimes.
Mm-hmm. One other thing I just thought of is that bodyguard also is very useful in protecting things that maybe don't have high lore but have like a good ability that requires them to exert. So you can think of maybe your Magicka Dispel, which could have a lot of lore. You can think of also any cards that have the Singer ability.
Yep.
Very good to get more value out of those.
Yep, I throw Simba Protector Cub in my Lorcana decks. I probably also to be throwing the Princeton too. But yeah, just having the bodyguard to protect the king, like anything that we required your character, bodyguard is super useful.
All right. So next keyword up is Challenger, and typically we see Challenger in colors of steel and amethyst, and Challenger usually always comes with a plus and then a number. So if it was Challenger +2, it would say when challenging, this character gets +2 strength. And when you hear the word Challenger, you might think, oh, I want to use this character to just like, it's in an aggressive, I'm gonna take out everything kind of deck. But it's actually more of a defensive card, because when you play a Challenger, you say, I dare you to exert your character. I dare you to go for that lore because I'm gonna swing at you hard. Yep. So you're not typically with the Challenger card, you're not questing with them. You're waiting until somebody else, quests, and you hit them for way more than you typically would.
Yeah, it's straight up punishing them further, and it's really good to have a lower card, kick out a bigger card. Like, a lot of the challenges right now are really good on anti-land because they can do a lot of damage to the locate and I think I did have a we were having a jaw for magnet to that prep.
I wasn't going to say anything, but he said land, so.
Yeah, but for the locating, that Challenger does a great way to deal with how a lot of people are getting around locating.
That's what I've been using my challengers for, is just to take out the locations.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a great ability that's exemplified the best probably from the first set, Captain Hook, Forceful Duelist, which I think he was in the Sapphire Steel starter deck, and when we played that initial game, I didn't realize that this was more of a defensive ability, and so I played my Captain Hook, and then my opponent played his Captain Hook, and we just sat there, and we're like, oh, I'm not challenging. No, you're not. Or I'm not questing. Are you questing? No. And so we just ended up building up this board, and with the word like challenger, like, you know, it just sounds like it's an aggressive whatever. And if you come from Magic or other trading card game backgrounds, you hear aggressive and you think, oh, I'm just gonna turn sideways and win. But in this, you just don't turn sideways. You just leave it as an open threat. It's kind of like having the, you know, your 6'6" best friend who's, you know, 250 pounds walking next to you.
One of the things I do like about Challenger, and we didn't mention this already, is Challenger is one of the 3 abilities that stack, which means you can add multiple cases of Challenger onto the character.
Yeah. So was it the Fairy Godmother that when she quests, she gives all your other characters Challenger +3 and the ability when they are banished in a challenge during your turn, they go back to your hand.
Also, Mo and Crab give Challenger.
Yep.
Yeah, and so if you have a character with Challenger and then you play that character, this character now it just went from like a 1 to a 6 strength.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely those cards are, you know, kind of take your opponent by surprise. They don't realize it. And that's another thing you have to pay attention to is, you know, if you're used to playing a game, you know, this game on Pixelborn or an online client, it may already do that math for you. Yesterday or 2 days ago when we were playing in our draft, there were multiple times where people were like, oh, I thought that character had, you know, it was only Challenger or something else. And so you just have to make sure you read the cards. It doesn't jump out at you. If you're only looking at the strength that's printed on the card, you may forget that, oh, they can take out my card if they have a Challenger on the field. Next up is Evasive, which is actually one of the few ones that's found in 3 colors, the keywords. That's in Emerald, Amethyst, and Ruby. And Evasive simply states that only characters with Evasive can challenge this character. So I know in other games there are similar abilities like this. Basically, it just says it makes your character harder to deal with. Like, all other characters can typically just be challenged. This one says you have to already have the specific ability to get rid of it or some sort of direct removal. What do you guys think about Evasive? Do you see it being used a lot in our scene here or online when you hear about people playing in tournaments, or is it something that's fallen to the wayside?
Yeah, you see a fair number of it. There are a few good key cards with it. Trying to think of what's on the one more team of late.
The new Jafar has it.
Yeah, the new default have it. And that's a key one that a lot of people are building decks around. So like, it's a good, and then one looking like if you're not prepared for it, it can teamwork with some decks. So like having the direct damage to get around it, or having characters that have evasive, or there are some that have counter evasive called that they gain evasive on your turn. But you see those in other colors like that. I have a bunch of cards like that.
Yeah. So something that allows the colors that don't have evasive some ways for your characters to deal with characters that do have evasive. Now, I know we talked about this for Bodyguard, that like, oh, this is typically good on these types of characters, like Bodyguard's ones with characters that have high willpower, or in combination with high lore cards that are generally weak. I would say evasive, typically, you would initially think that it's best on characters that have high lore, and I would say that's right probably 80 to 90% of the time. But to counter an evasive, you may want a card that's you're not using it as a quester mainly, but just a high power evasive card. Might have a low willpower, but just to threaten other people who play evasive cards.
Yeah, so like Wildcat on the advantage item when he tapped. That's a good. He have evasive, and that's a good game to protect him to get the multiple items removed.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Magic Carpet and Amethyst that move people to location one per turn. Like that's a good card for the evasive because you can get the. He's more likely to stay alive, so you're more willing to use his effect more often.
Yep. Yeah. So it's not just for high lore questing, but also protection are just hard to deal with. So I put down for the card that I thought was most iconic for evasive was the Minnie Mouse Stylish Surfer in the last set. So Rise of the Floodborn. She saw a lot of play in the Ruby Amethyst kind of control decks.
He still gets a decent amount of play.
And just because you can put her down on turn 3, she's a 1/3 evasive and quest for 2. So typically a 1/3 for 3, you're like, that's not great. But the quest for 2 and very hard to get rid of unless they have direct removal makes her kind of a shining star in that deck. The other one that Scott mentioned was...
Oh, Pascal. One of my favorite characters from the very first chapter. He's just this lovely little chameleon that can hide.
Mm-hmm.
But he, what I always saw with the evasive was they were these little tiny creatures at the beginning that, like Pascal, he's a chameleon, but he has evasive, so he was hard to deal with. So they were just more annoyance than anything else.
Mm-hmm. But we also have some big bodies. So like
we do now.
One of the genie, well, no, even the first chapter. So like Brave Wheel Terror have evasive. And then one of the genies who have a decent body is evasive.
Yeah, is that the all-powerful one? Or the...
It's not the Floodborn one.
Oh, so that one's a 3/4, costs 6.
Yeah,
uninkable, bounces a card. Yeah, I think you'll notice almost always for evasives, because evasive is such a strong ability, there's going to be some drawback. Like it won't be as strong of a willpower or as high of a strength.
Yeah, actually, both of the genies had evasive.
The first one did? Oh, yeah.
Yep. Both of the big ones did.
So, but I think as, more and more cards come out, there's more direct removal or ways to deal with or bounce or, exert characters and keep them exerted. The evasives are going to become less powerful until it becomes something that people aren't prepared for.
Yeah, it's the game version of flying.
Yeah, in Magic. Yeah. So the next one is interesting. It's probably, it's the only keyword that's actually a negative, and it's reckless. And we see this right now, it's only in Ruby. And except for if you include Emerald cards, a lot of Emerald cards can give reckless to the opposing characters. And reckless states that they can't quest and must challenge if able. So this is something that, I said in the last keyword for evasive, if you see this on a card, you should expect the stats to be less. If you see reckless on a card, you should expect the stats to be more than typical.
Yeah, so they have a higher CAC, but the willpower sometimes is lacking.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's only one card with, it might not even be this. I think that might be the Goopy they previewed for the next set that we see have Black Grit and have a higher willpower
Than strength?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, double check if he had electric or he had what.
Yeah, as of right now, officially, there's only one card whose willpower is higher than their strength with the reckless.
Which one is that?
That's Tuk Tuk. He has a strength of 4 and a willpower of 5.
Yeah, costs 4 and is uninkable.
Yep.
I would say generally not a great card, but
all the other ones, because I'm looking at all the reckless cards right now, all the other ones, their strength are higher than their willpower.
Mm-hmm.
Except for Della Duck, who is flat 3/3.
So yeah, I would say...
so the Goopy I'm thinking of have what? Not Black Grit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would think of reckless as it's a trade-off, right? You are saying my card is at a disadvantage almost always for having reckless, but because of that, I can have, better stats on this card. And there are ways to avoid having to challenge someone's exerted characters. Namely, you can use your character to sing. Which the card that I think exemplifies reckless the best, Maui Hero to All, is often used to do. Just because you don't want him to be swinging into something that's necessarily going to cause him to die, or be banished. But, after you get your first attack off, challenge off, someone may say, oh, here's my high strength character that I'm going to leave exerted, you have to take him out. And then instead they use Maui to sing a song, and, your other character is vulnerable, and you didn't quest with your other characters that you wanted to. So there's a lot of kind of interplay between the different abilities here.
One thing about Reckless that we haven't mentioned is this is actually the only keyword that actually stops a player from ending their turn unless they've actually fulfilled the needs of the card.
Yeah, that is true.
Because Reckless, even with locations now, if you have a character with Reckless, you have to use it.
Yeah.
Your turn cannot end unless you use this character.
Yeah. Yeah, that is, I guess maybe a nuance that we want to explain for people who are newer to the game. Reckless doesn't say specifically that if you're given a choice between challenging and singing or doing something else to exert your character, you have to choose challenging. It just says by the end of your turn, if this character is unexerted and there's something to challenge, you need to challenge it. Next on our list is Resist. And Resist says that anytime damage is dealt to a character with Resist, the damage is reduced by the number of Resist that it has. So like Scott said, this is another stackable keyword.
Which I love to do. I absolutely love stacking my Resist.
Scott plays his Tiana, which has Resist +2, his...
At a location that gives resist, with Vault Door that gives resist, with Mouse Armor that gives resist.
There are times where his Tiana, I think, has had, 5 or 6 resist. It's like, you're not getting rid of that by challenging into it.
And it's really fun when I add Ward onto her, too.
Yeah. So we see resist in Steel and Sapphire, but only in Sapphire through Cogsworth. Cogsworth gives all your other characters +1 resist, but I don't think there's any other cards, right, that have resist in Sapphire.
There's none that have it
like
part of their card, yeah. We have 4 dozen eggs that gives it as well, but...
So it's kind of like a cousin affinity. So I don't know. Do you guys have any tips for when resist is good? I mean, Scott, you've played with it the most.
Against my deck.
Resist is, I think, complementary to Bodyguard. You can use Resist to build up those cards that you don't want to leave the game. Use Resist, like you mentioned, with my Tiana, where I just stack Resist on her. It's because her ability stops a lot of other decks because they're stop all action cards. So giving her that Resist just boosts her defense, that I can try to keep her on the game longer, try to slow my opponents down.
Also, it stopped pinging, so it will shut them stuff down. Like,
grab your swords gets shut down a lot.
We can grab your sword and what with it too, but big King of Giant Fairy, who does 1 damage when it's the end to play. It
stops her. With my resist, I am not afraid to go up against some decks because I'm like, I have these resists. I have this protection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, resist is a fun keyword. It came out in the second set, so that was Rise of the Floodborn, and I would say Tiana is probably the number 1 card that people can think of having a strong amount of resist, or maybe the Hercules card too.
Also, the print we mentioned earlier in Bodyguard.
Yeah.
Bodyguard plus resist is a good combo.
Yep, and it's on. The Prince has 2 lore too that he can get, so it's just all around. Yeah, I think that's an underrated, underutilized card. So moving on, we have Rush. So Rush, as you could probably imagine, gives you some sense of urgency. Rush says that they can challenge the turn they're played. So typically when you play a character in Lorcana, the description in the rule says that character's ink is still drying, or you could say it is wet. And so characters who have wet ink cannot exert. They can't exert to quest, they can't exert to challenge, they can't exert if their ability tells them that they can exert. They can't do any of that. Rush gets around that in allowing them to challenge. They still can't quest, they still can't use an ability on them that requires them to exert, but it allows them to challenge. And we see Rush in Ruby and Amethyst, and in
One honorable mention in Emerald with Beast Wolfsbane.
Yeah.
If you ever remember, he was a caller of the week at a previous episode. And what we're talking about with Liquid, a lot of time we see the higher toughness roll willpower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because what the bakery the prize removal card.
Yeah.
So the opponent doesn't see it coming when they come in for the challenge. So there's a good way. So if they have tap characters with ward, what is a good way to get around the ward ability?
Yeah. Yeah. The situation Matt's describing is, it's very common. Your opponent might have no cards on the battlefield, and you've got maybe three characters you could quest with, and you're like, yes, I'm going to get lots of lore this turn. Well, you do because you think, well, if they play a character, they're not going to be able to challenge me to the next turn. This is a free quest. Well, Rush completely stops that and says, no, anytime your character is exerted, you better be ready to get punched in the face. And we'll say this card again because he's just the icon for Rush is Maui Hero to All. And I've had someone describe him to me when the first chapter came out. He's like, why would you play with Dragonfire when you could have Dragonfire with legs?
And that's it.
I have not heard that.
And that's what we're seeing now. Dragonfire is not being played. A lot of those Ruby Amethyst or Ruby Sapphire control decks that we see maybe are running one copy of it. Mm-hmm. Most of them are focusing heavily on removing other characters.
Yeah. So the one drawback if you are relying on characters, removing other characters by using Rush or through challenges is evasion.
Yep.
Right. And that's what Dragonfire is better than Mauiada's getting rid of the evasive cards. Yeah, and when you pair evasion with ward, which we get to, it makes it very hard to deal with. Then Dragonfire can't target those. So there's always it's rare, especially in the beginning of a card game's life cycle, that one card is strictly better than the other. But in this case, Maui isn't strictly better than Dragonfire, but most of the time is. Evasion obviously he can't deal with, but now that there's Maui's Fishhook, he can.
Yeah. But I'm wondering if that's why they made Maui Fishhook free from Maui.
Yep. Yeah. So we're on our last 4 abilities. The next one is probably the most unique to this game that I've seen. It's called Shift, and it appears in all ink colors. And Shift comes with a number, and it says you can pay that amount of ink to play this on top of one of your characters named whatever character you're playing. So if it was Hades, he has Shift 6, you can pay 6 ink to play this on top of one of your characters named Hades.
Unless you're running Emblem, then everything is going on to Morph.
Yeah. If you're running Emerald, then you can put things on a Morph.
You just run Morph, you're done.
Yeah. So let's talk about this a little bit because it's not clear, especially when I played this during the first chapter, what Shift allows you to do. So what are the benefits?
It doesn't allow you
so what do you guys see the benefits of shifting?
So by shifting, you get you can attack and you can king quickly. So Emblem, no, not Emblem. Emerald Steel, Gong, you did tip to quickly ding into a higher card. So you play the 1-drop queen, turn 2, you tip for 2 for the other evil queen, and then you can immediately start singing.
Sing Whole New World.
You could sing a whole new world.
Yeah.
You could grab your sword. Let the Tome lay down is normally my go-to for turn 2.
Yeah.
Or a bare necessity if they don't have anything on the board.
I've heard that's the most degenerate thing that people complain about is if you go first with, and this is the whole argument of why people want to ban Whole New World, is first turn Queen, second turn Shift Queen, sing Whole New World against like a Ruby Amethyst deck or any deck that runs a high number of uninkables. You could totally brick their hand and totally ruin the their mulligan experience.
Yeah, but again though, back to the we talked in previous episodes about the banning card, like that very situations role, and like the card that really needs to get banned are just like you play, you win.
Yeah.
And like luckily the game does not have anything like that. It doesn't have anything like none of the cards guarantee a win. But yeah, that is a fun combo.
Yeah. So back to Shift. So it allows you to sing for higher cost sooner than you can. And sing is already great because it allows you to play cards for, no ink.
Yeah.
Shift.
It also allows you to get just characters out with stronger abilities. Not just sing, but I'm thinking of like Aladdin, Heroic Outlaw.
Yeah.
You get Des Aladdin out, and now when he's a stronger character, challenging, he's getting more lore too, and causing your opponents to lose lore.
Yeah.
Also, it get the more powerful characters without tuner, so you can lower your curve.
Yeah.
We talked about curves before in previous episodes. Like I was working on a Amethyst villain deck, and that one, because all the high end villains had curves that were ways to cheapen them, you don't have to worry so much about the curve and your ink because you still have ways to get the good cards out quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It allows you to get things out quickly, but there is a cost, right? When you shift, it says that you place it on top of the character that already exists. So there are benefits and drawbacks to that. The benefit is it keeps that card's, wet/dry status. So you could use it to quest if it was played in a previous turn, the card that you placed it on top of. But the drawback is that card is now effectively gone. You are consuming or eating or destroying your existing card, which, if you were able to play this separately, you'd have two characters instead of just one.
Which is why, the tip is normally good if you need the ability right away, if you need to sing right away. The late game, a lot of times it's better to play the tip card if you have the ink instead of shifting.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's cheaper. But that's the benefit. You get the cheaper because you're sacrificing that other card.
Yeah. And shifting is another way to, like Rush, surprise your opponent. And for me, the reason why I chose the iconic for shift character of Tinkerbell Giant Fairy is the first kind of competitive tournament I went to, I probably lost 2 or 3 games specifically because I just wasn't prepared for Tinkerbell to come out, or I was prepared but then that made me paralyzed because I didn't want to exert any of my characters, so that way he could 2-for-1 or 3-for-1 me.
Yeah, Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, it set up can Bakery be a board wipe.
Mm-hmm.
Also the pairing her with Grab Your Sword. So turn 4 you shift, do 1 damage to every king, and then have them king grab your sword. And then at turn 4 you're not gonna see a lot of stuff that have willpower greater than 3. So the Bakery an early board wipe.
Yep.
The other thing we keep in mind about shifted is it retains the state that the card it goes on top on is in.
Right. So if it was exerted, it would
if
stay
it was exerted. If it was dry, or if it's not dry, it stays not dry. But if the card that went on top of got any bonuses, like it was given Challenger or something from it also retains those.
Yep. Or
it just loses whatever card it went on top of, whatever that card's inherited, not inherited, but
printed stats.
Printed stats where it loses those.
Yep. So, you could shift something on. So if someone played the Elsa Spirit of Winter and exerted your character, let's say your queen, and then you played Shifted Queen on top of it, you still can't, do anything with her. I mean, I guess the next following turn she would unexert, but the idea is, it's any debuffs, buffs, whatever, they carry on, including damage counters too.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
another thing cool is that because they'll call the stuck together until they hit that they call pile. So like let it go, or anything that send them to your inkwell, you're getting 2 ink instead of 1 now. Or if they bounce to your hand, both cards get bounced back to your hand.
Yeah. The one thing that it doesn't do though is characters that say, or is it when this character is banished in a challenge, return it to your hand.
Yeah.
You only get the top one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because by the turn banishing, both cards go into the discard first, and then.
And once they hit a different zone, they are no longer considered a stack.
Yeah. So just a lot of nuances. I mean, it's a very interesting mechanic. I'm excited to see kind of how people play it going forward and what other cards get shift abilities. And in addition, shift up until this point has always been cheaper. Like you can play it for cheaper. We haven't seen anything that has a higher shift cost.
Well,
And the only reason why that may happen is because on the was it Basil Mouse Detective, whatever, if you shift the 5 cost one, you get to draw 3 cards. So there could be some ability that says if you paid the shift, you get to do something better and it costs more, but
yeah, top on the tip have always been cheaper, and tip is only on Floodborn. I don't know if we invented that yet.
yeah, that's, yep.
And actually, I'm looking at the cards right now. The shift cost is always 2 less than
Not
the normal
always.
cost.
Almost always.
Almost. I'm
Yeah.
looking because everyone's so hard.
So
The
the
queen
queen-
is 3.
The queen is 3.
Beat Travis Hill is also 3.
The one is only 1. That Basil whatever Mouse Detective. He's a higher shift cost than normal.
He's the one. But most of the others are, it's only 2.
I know that's not his subtitle. I'm just saying Mouse Detective because it's not.
It's Basil, great Mouse Detective, actually.
Great Mouse Detective, yeah.
Yeah, remember that great. Oh, what's her?
Which one? Rapunzel's?
No,
Or
Nikita.
Oh, she's a shift 3, regular 5.
Yeah. So,
Also, Magic of the Fell.
Is a shift 5.
Okay.
so typically, almost always it's 2. Sometimes it's 1. Sometimes it's a little
Milo
bit
is
more,
3.
more or less.
Milo Thatch.
Yeah.
So, got 3 more abilities. The next one, another ability that I think is unique to Lorcana, is Singer, and it allows you to sing songs with characters that cost. So, sorry, let me read this so I don't get this wrong. A character counts as cost X to sing, where if they had Singer X. So, Ariel, Spectacular Singer, has Singer 5. That means you can exert her to sing a song that costs 5 or less.
So the way it played, it's unique, but they're all similar effect than Magic. So Mana have what they call a Mana Dork, where you tap them for mana. Also, the Convey It? I might be pronouncing it right. Convoy It. Anyway, it's a keyword that you reduce the mana cost by 1 for each creature you tap for it.
Okay. So back when I played Magic, there was like affinity, right? That was a thing too. Yeah. So similar, yeah. Cost reduction in this case, singing is you play the song completely for free, just for the cost of exerting your character.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic ability.
It's very Disney-pied.
Yeah.
So the one drawback to singing, obviously, is that you have to have a character to sing. I mean, the singer ability itself is great because it allows your card to play like something that you would normally. So, for example, Ariel Spectacular Singer has Singer 5. You can play her on turn 3. So that means on turn 4 you could sing a song that costs 5 that normally you would never even be able to play outright for 5, and now you're playing it for free. The drawback is now you're not using Ariel to quest or to challenge, but her card not great for questing or challenging typically. And singers, I would say, generally very low statted for their cost, but sometimes it can get you that one card early enough that it gets you enough tempo that you don't care.
Yeah, like playing the Cinderella turn 1, turn 2, you can king up the pre-card cards, and there's a lot of good songs in that pre-card range. And that really they're gonna start giving you the better tempo and so I think overall King is a fantastic ability. And the song though that themselves is really powerful. So getting those out quicker is a huge bop.
Oh yeah, and Singer we only see in the color amber. So far, there's no Singers in any other colors. Next, we have Support, which we see in amber and sapphire. And Support says, whenever this character quests, you may add their strength to another chosen character's strength this turn. So I really like Support, even though I was telling the guys before this, I haven't successfully used it in any competitive constructed deck. But to me, the premise is great because it says that I get to continue to do what I was going to do normally, which was to quest and progress my win condition. And I get to also contest the board with something else. Maybe that doesn't quest for much or has a high willpower, so it can handle multiple challenges, but not a high strength.
Yeah, and it's a great ability because instead of doing a trade that 2-for-1, so 2 of my characters for 1 of yours, I now make it that I can just have only one of my characters take out one of your characters, and then it's a neutral disrupt then.
Mm-hmm.
And then like one of my favorite go-to describing fun moments or fun jokes is the whole Grandma Tower got hands, where they put all of the pull on the Grandma Tower. Grandma Tower is get 10 crank and then whacked everything.
Smacks Goofy Night for a day.
Yeah, the Grandma Tower is dead, but he packed a punt, and that's really fun.
Yeah. I would say that I think Support is great, or it's better in limited than it is in constructed currently. Because we haven't really seen it a ton, but I played it to a decent effect during our draft against locations, because locations because they have generally much higher willpower than your characters have strength. I was still able to kind of progress my lore and throw multiple characters strength while only sacrificing one character
Yeah.
turn.
Yeah, the foil is a great way to deal with locate then.
Yeah, so our choice for iconic support cards are Alice, Growing Girl, even though she doesn't have support herself.
But she gives it to
She gives
everyone.
everyone else support.
And she benefits from it. So I like her at we'll actually talk about it later. We made her call of the week.
Yep.
Spoilers.
2-minute spoilers.
Yeah.
And then the other ones that I like, not just because of the random, hard to get combo, but Huey, Dewey, and Louie are generally pretty good statted for having support. They just don't see a lot of play right now because if you want to talk about current meta, it's just there's not room for them in a lot of the Sapphire decks. They are not as quick as they need to be, and they're not as powerful late game. But good mid-range for limited especially, and you'll see a lot of them. Last keyword is Ward, and we see that in Sapphire and Emerald. And Ward states that opponents can't choose this character except to challenge. So again, it's a beneficial keyword, similar to Magic the Gathering. Was it hexproof?
Yep.
Is what the keyword is. So it's great against targeted removal, but it does not work against things like Be Prepared, Tinkerbell's 1 damage to everything ability, and Grab Your Swords.
Yeah, my deck have a lot of that ping abilities, and so Ward that shut it down.
Mm-hmm. Specifically Cogsworth.
Yeah, Cogsworth is such a bane to my deck.
It's okay, we won't
That's
release
the card that
this.
needs to be banned.
Yeah. We won't release this until after the set championship, so
It's fine. Most people who are already going to that challenges already know about Cogsworth.
yeah.
I'm going to tell you that's the only deck I lost to, was the deck that I played against that had Cogsworth.
Yeah. I would say that from what I remember in the first chapter, Ward was not seen that much until right before Rise of the Floodborn came out, and there were some decks that were trying to run a ton of Ward because the targeted removal was the only removal that existed, and basically you just get around it. You force them to have other answers. And so that was particularly good against the Amethyst Ruby control decks, but I'd say it's a fine card, or fine ability. Just again, usually that's not the reason why the card that it's on is good. It's because it's protecting a much better ability, like Cogsworth's ability. So our iconic card that we chose for Ward was Aurora Dreaming Guardian, which is let's see if I can do this from the top of my head, a 5-cost, 3/5 quest for 2, shift 3, all of your other characters gain Ward. So kind of fun, but ultimately she just becomes a lightning rod.
Yeah.
Just a weird thing to think about. Princess getting struck by lightning.
Yeah, the interactions you get in the game.
Just along came Zeus.
Yeah.
I think that wraps up our individual keywords. Are there any ones that you guys hope to see more, more play in the competitive scene or just even at our locals you think are exciting but maybe haven't been explored a lot?
I think it would be fun because songs are so useful and songs are in every color. I think Tinger in a non-amber could be interesting. That is that's the only one that is straight up above that is not seen in any other color.
And Reckless.
Well, Liquid is kind of a debuff.
Negative, yeah.
So Liquid, I'm okay with that to be one color. But I think Tinger in multiple colors. Not the Bodyguard. Bodyguard, I wouldn't mind Teen in more colors. And Challenger also the probably Teen more colors. We just can say where it's at.
Of course, Matt says that. Yeah. I personally like when you see kind of the keyword abilities combined into something that's like interesting. So I think specifically of Evasive and Ward are just very fun together. When you get an Evasive card that, and you have a sardine can out or something that gives it Ward, it's just your opponent really only has one answer and they have to have evasion characters on the board.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like those kind of combinations or what ifs or like, if I could get him evasion, Ward, and
resist.
Yeah, resist. Like, how crazy would that be?
I might have pulled that off a few times.
But Floodborne and the tip, I think it's one of the best mechanics of the game, and I'm always happy to see the new one. A lot of my favorite cards from the set tend to be Floodborne.
Yeah, I would say that, they try, I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but the Floodborns always have very interesting abilities. It's very rare that it's just, actually I don't think it's anything that's a Floodborn vanilla.
Yeah.
It's Floodborn and then some kind of one-off ability that you only see on this character. So, that wraps up our keyword, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a deep dive, medium dive.
That's
we went snorkeling.
Yeah, it looks like a definite thing. This is fine. Hopefully we don't have to touch upon this for years until they add a new one, and then we have to do it all over again.
Yeah. Our card of the week this week is Alice, Growing Girl. Scott, do you have it brought up?
I do. She is a 3 ink cost and is inkable. A 1 strength and 4 willpower. Dreamborn hero. 1 lore. And she has the abilities of good advice. Your other characters gain support. And what did I do? While this character has 10 strength or more, she gets +4 lore. I cannot see the artist's name though on my screen.
Alice Pisoni.
Okay. Yeah, that's Alice.
So I've yet to see her go off. I think I've seen people play her and then people try to, burn it with fire because they're afraid of, someone getting 5 lore on a card on turn 5.
I have her in my deck. I have 1 copy of her, and I think I pulled her off 1 time. And that's it.
Yeah, I think Bella trained Professor is a much easier one to pull off in the same color, so you just see that one played a lot more.
Yeah. So she's easier to pull off because she just requires 10 ink, which if you're playing a certain style of deck, you're going to get to. Whereas Alice requires you to have characters out in play for her to reach her potential, and typically people will try to get rid of your characters, and they can't get rid of your ink.
Yeah, Alice is a very popular character. I know a lot of people really like the artwork and stuff on the card. If you are looking to play it, I feel like Sapphire Ruby is the combinating the player because we have a lot of high cost cards, and so the giving them the port to equip with are gonna be the quickest way to give Alice the put 10.
I've seen people also play her with Emerald with the Pete bad guy.
Yep.
And the Pain and Panic.
Yep.
So kind of like the give another character a higher strength, and then you, since they have support, they can pass that on.
Yeah, and it's a nice little domino effect, right? You give it to Panic, and then Panic gives it to Pete, and then Pete gives it to
Alice.
And then it's a great stacking to give to them.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's, in the future there could be some sort of deck that's built around her, but she relies so much on you having characters, specifically 9 strength worth of characters out, which is just hard to do with just 2 characters.
Yep.
I think typically you need 3 other characters. Which, I'm sure the designers knew this. They're like, 1 strength is probably just right. If she had 2 strength, then maybe it would be too easy.
I'm kind of curious to see if there's a way to make her work in a Amber Sapphire with this lockjaw. So you're just flooding the board. And then you just prop her down and give everything to put to her. And then all of a sudden you just have a crazy amount of lore.
Yeah. That'd be interesting because it would require you to not have... basically use those characters for like a multiplicative advantage rather than just an additive. Yeah. That's interesting. Maybe that's the next Pride Lands Stitch Alice combo. Scott, do you remember the Disney interpretation of Alice in Wonderland?
Do I remember? It's not even a question. It's Alice in Wonderland. It's your very typical Lewis Carroll adaptation of the story. Disney did not do a lot of changes to Alice. So if you know the story of Alice in Wonderland, you know Disney's Alice in Wonderland. Growing Girl is representing the scene where you eat, where she's has a cake in front of her. It says "Eat me." She has a drink in front of her that says "Drink me." The "Eat me" cake always allowed her to grow. This is taking that character as if she grew and grew and grew, and she didn't stop growing. And that's reflected in she's eating cake by eating the strength of the other characters. And that's allowing her to grow bigger and bigger in her lore. So this is a straight up interpretation of the character, just taking it to that next step.
She just kept eating the cake.
She just kept eating. Who doesn't want to eat your problems away?
Yeah.
Sounds like what I'm doing after this podcast. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Adventures in the Ink. We will see you guys in a week. And remember, adventure awaits.